Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Luke and here on this channel I talk about perfumes. Today I want to do an in-depth review of a classic fragrance from Estée Lauder called Cinnabar. I got this back in, I want to say December, and I only wore it during the winter. Then I put it aside, and now that autumn is around the corner, I really want to start wearing it again because I absolutely love spicy Orientals. And Cinnabar is undoubtedly one of the best, most iconic spicy Orientals from the 1970s and 80s. At this point, I think we all know and agree that the Oriental trend regained traction in the late 1970s with the release of the iconic Opium from Yves Saint Laurent, which came out in 1977. Cinnabar was released a year later and was allegedly created because Mrs. Lauder, having witnessed the success of Opium and other Eastern-inspired fragrances, decided it was about time to jump on the Oriental trend and release an Oriental fragrance, because obviously Orientals were very popular at the time. They used to be popular back in the 50s, and even at the beginning of the century, Shalimar, that was released back in the 1920s, was a massive success, and so was You've Chew, that was released in the 50s, also from Estée Lauder. According to the Estée Lauder website, Estée Lauder had always been fascinated with the mystery and opulence of the Orient. In 1978, she decided the time was right for an Eastern-influenced fragrance. Cinnabar marked the beginning of a worldwide wave of exotic amber fragrances. And she also said that Cinnabar is a fragrance that fulfills every woman's yearning for the exotic and mysterious. Its rich amber notes provide a lingering warmth and sensuousness. And when this fragrance was first released, interestingly, Cinnabar wasn't intended to be a standalone release. They called it You've Chew Soft, a softer version of the original You've Chew from the 50s. And I will say that while it does resemble You've Chew and they're definitely similar, it's also a scent of its own. You've Chew is significantly more musky and even musty compared to Cinnabar, where the mustiness was replaced by the sweet peach and a zesty orange accord, which makes Cinnabar a bit brighter, more uplifting, although it's still a very heavy, spicy Oriental fragrance. The perfumers behind it were Bernard Chant and Joséphine Catapanon. Bernard Chant is responsible for creating a bunch of other classics from Estée Lauder, such as Estée, Azuré, Alliage, and Beautiful. But he also created Holsten Classic, the classic Aramis, as well as Cabochard and Aromatics Elixir for Clinique. And needless to say, all of these perfumes have in some way changed the course of perfume history. They've become legendary. Joséphine Catapanon, the other perfumer who worked on You've Chew, who worked on Cinnabar, also created the original You've Chew from the 50s. And she also did Fiji for Guy Laroche. In 1978, she and Bernard Chant joined forces to create a modernized version of You've Chew, which was called You've Chew Soft, and some sources state that You've Chew had already been created, You've Chew Soft had already been created in 1977, but Cinnabar was then introduced in 1978, a year later. So it's not entirely clear whether both of them or just Catapano worked on Soft You've Chew in 77. It's also not entirely clear whether Soft You've Chew was released as a standalone perfume or just a flanker of You've Chew, and whether they just decided to call it Cinnabar a year later. So we don't know that. The creation of this fragrance is still shrouded in a veil of mystery, which in my opinion is very fitting because the fragrance itself is supposed to evoke the mystery of the Orient and, as Mrs. Lauder says, fulfill the yearning for the exotic. So I would say it's a very mysterious fragrance, even though it smells similar to so many other amber spicy fragrances on the market. But I still really enjoy Cinnabar. I think it's one of the best big and bold spicy Orientals from the 70s. I also own Cocoa from Chanel. I also own You've Chew and a decant of Opium. I really want to get a full bottle of Opium. I became interested in this fragrance because it was recommended to me by a friend and subscriber of mine. I'd been familiar with it before, but I was convinced that I didn't like it for some reason. But then I just decided to blind buy this bottle, and it was a successful blind buy. I think I also tried it at the Estée Lauder counter maybe 2 to 3 years ago, and I also really liked it. I think it's a stunning, opulent, vintage, classic fragrance. So let's maybe talk about the notes and the main accords. The old version, this is the new version, by the way, which came out in, I want to say 2014. But the old version has more notes listed on Fragrantica. But I'll make sure to put both note breakdowns on the screen because I believe the note breakdown for the newer version is incomplete. So the notes are jasmine, orange flower, tangerine, clove, muguet, lily, olibanum, sandalwood, and patchouli. I can definitely smell a sweet peach note in the opening, which isn't listed in the new note breakdown. I can also smell cinnamon, which is also not listed. And I can also detect some smoky incense or something resinous and very smoky in the base, something resinous and balsamic, which is also for some reason not listed. I don't really understand why they would remove cinnamon because there's no Cinnabar without cinnamon. And I'm aware that Cinnabar has nothing to do with cinnamon as a word. Cinnabar is, I think, a type of pigment that was imported from China. It's a deep red pigment and it was also very toxic. They used to use it for those lacquered Chinese boxes and smaller objects. But Cinnabar is definitely a spicy fragrance. I can smell the clove, the cinnamon, even a bit of carnation. So I don't understand why there's no cinnamon in the note breakdown because I can definitely smell it. I can also detect something animalic in the dry down. I wouldn't say this is a floral fragrance, but I can detect a hint of white lily. And I would also say this is quite a linear scent on my skin. I do pick up on the peach and the orange in the opening, but once that sweetness from the opening goes away, you're left with that spicy ambery base, which stays on you all day long. It's not quite as beast mode as the older version, but it's still very powerful and strong. I only need about 3 to 5 sprays of this one, because this is not the type of fragrance you spray on and forget about. You won't forget that you're wearing this one because it will keep reminding you that it's there. It will remind you all day long. So even if you have the newer version, go easy on the sprayer and keep in mind that I used to be someone who oversprayed everything. I used to overspray fragrances like a maniac. Believe me, I don't do that anymore. Now I only do about, I want to say, 5 to 15 sprays, depending on the fragrance. And Cinnabar is one of those fragrances that isn't to be oversprayed. Please don't overspray this one. You'll overwhelm everyone. I did make a mistake of overspraying it once, and my mum was just, she hated it. So I have to be very careful not to wear it around her. She's very sensitive to fragrance in general, but she really dislikes. She used to wear Poison back in the early 90s. So as I said, the performance is incredible on this fragrance. On me, this lasts 12 plus hours. The sillage is there. I can smell myself. Other people can smell me. I also want to say a bit about the reformulation. This line of fragrances is called the House of Lauder collection, which is a collection of Estée Lauder's timeless classic fragrances. They all come in these rectangular bottles, and these bottles are actually very nice and they're very sturdy, and they come in beautiful cardboard boxes. You get a little card inside. They're very luxurious, I have to say. Of course, I would prefer to have an original version from the 90s or the 2000s, but this one is also quite good and I'm happy to own it. And from this same collection, I also really like Spellbound, which is a spicy white floral carnation fragrance. And I also really like Estée and Intuition, which has been discontinued, unfortunately. I would really like to try Azuré and Alliage, which are both old school, earthy chypres. So I will say that Estée Lauder is one of the very few companies that reformulate their classics well. I'm happy with these reformulations of the House of Lauder line. I'm also happy with my bottle of Knowing, which is also a new batch. It's very strong. To me, it smells just like the original. Of course, some people will disagree. Some people who used to wear these fragrances back in the day as their signature scents might disagree and, find this, describe these new versions as a ghost of its former self or something like that. But everyone is entitled to their opinion, and my opinion is that the new formulation of Cinnabar is still excellent. So in conclusion, Cinnabar is a very loud, vintage style, spicy Oriental, in the same vein as Youth Dew, because it was initially created as a softer version of Youth Dew. However, I would say it's significantly sweeter and more fruity than Youth Dew. It's an absolute spice bomb of a fragrance. The cinnamon is the star of the show. It's heady, spicy, but it also smells powdery, resinous, sweet, balsamic, and ambery when it dries down, and it almost smells boozy. I really like this fragrance, and I really hope this review made it justice. I think it really deserves to get more love and recognition in the fragrance community because it's a timeless scent, and who knows how long it will be around. These classics get discontinued all the time, so I'm just happy this is still available. And we've come to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you like Cinnabar, if you have it in your collection, or maybe if you want to try it, or even if you dislike it. Let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice rest of the weekend. Bye.